Hello, Sinan.
Hello, Jean-Baptiste.
Well, it's great to have you today with us.
Thank
Um,
you.
I followed your work obviously since the early 2000s because we were students together. We even worked on a few papers together. And um, can you tell us a bit more about your story and how you arrived from Istanbul to Paris in the early 2000s?
Okay, I mean, my interest in synthesizers it began in the end of 80s. So with like Yamaha, Korg, Roland synthesizers, which I met, and it was like the fashion at that time. I didn't have money to afford them, but I started to work in some music shops, and then during my university studies, I studied electronics engineering in technical university here. And during these studies, I also started to work with top arrangers in the country as production assistant, because this path has been very similar to all around the world. I mean, in London, people who became famous in that on the field, they started in serving the tea in the studios, and then also working in the studio, working in the music shops. I mean, the story is more or less alike. Suddenly, I met C Sound after we got access to the World Wide Web in mid '90s. So instead of watching the scene just from the keyboard or electronic musician magazines or periodicals like that, so I met some also academical aspects of computer music, opened new ways, new doors to me, and met people. And I started to compose some music, electroacoustic music. But at the same time, I was doing also composing music for media and doing music production a lot. But I decided to move Paris after I got an invitation from Centre de Création de Musicale et Xanakis CC Mix in Paris in 2001. All my background in that on that field is coming from these years I spent in Paris as an student, academician, and as a PhD student, activities on research, performances, also composing and doing sound design for theaters, spectacles in France. What do I do? I mean, what were these studies? I mean, they were. I started to first studying electronic music in CC Mix. It was a center founded by the electronic music pioneer Yannis Xenakis, French Greek composer. Is a very monumental figure of 20th century contemporary music, and a particular one because he is the figure of multidisciplinary approach, combining different disciplines from mathematics, engineering, architecture, sound, acoustics, and musical composition.
So this is how you started. You took Yanis Xenakis' theory,
Yeah.
and then you built a program to actually made what he had expressed but could not do at the time.
Yes, I mean there were. Yeah, sure. I mean, Xenakis Jandin oscillator. He tried before in '90s. So when he had access to digital computer, and then he had assistants to develop this software. Also, like the products like UPIC. I mean, it's a machine where you could draw the form, musical form, and assign it to a wavetable oscillators at that time. What he could not have, I mean, all these orchestral pieces he composed from late 50s until the end of his career were calculated basically with manual efforts. So with calculators also, of course, and at that time, and not using computers. So the foundations of this stochastic processes he was using and the mappings of these results to his orchestral music were done with manual efforts, not with using by computers of that time. I could get that and comprehend that, and then start to apply to the tools of electronic music of that time. And here I'm talking about the beginning of 2000, where we had the first titanium G4 MacBook Pro, for example. And the MSP has started, Max MSP. So the computers were, the personal computers, I mean, a notebook was powerful enough to deliver significant calculations for audio. I started to study the acoripsis model of Xenakis. So, and then tried to learn Max MSP late 2001 and built the application called Stokos around that model. So, and all the story has begun like that. I mean, my activities with Max MSP and the algorithmic approach, which I would study and also do research and bring it further. What Xenakis has done until that time. And then leaving Max MSP and now I'm using Juice. And then, I mean, beginning of 2010, 2011, I started to do programming with C++. So, and then that's how all this research and study became commercially available as professional products. So, in plugin format and standalone apps, etc. So, what I follow now as a pet is what I followed, what Sonic Lab has followed as pet has been limiting itself to algorithmic design of sound using these stochastic processes for algorithmic approach. I mean, for our audience, what does mean algorithm? Is like algorithm is like a set of rules. I mean, instructions which performs a solution in the computer world. So you code a set of instructions and then you reach at the end to some results which you use for some purpose. I mean, and here I use stochastic processes. I mean, for some obtaining some results to map musical parameters. A stochastic process is we have in our daily life actually very common examples. I mean, like if you flip a coin and the chances which side you have is like 50%. I mean, this you can model with uniform distribution. But I mean, if you see a light bulb like turning on or off like a failure, and the modeling this light behavior of this light bulb is actually it's not uniform distribution but binomial distribution. And in statistics, it's a mathematical science. I offer most of them in these in Sonic Lab applications for different purposes. I mean, I started to use this in my applications for defining basic identities of sound, like the start point and the end point of a musical event. Define its sonic entity in music parameter space, like how is it going to change its pitch from the start to end, or the amplitude, or other modern musical parameters, sound synthesis parameters offered through these, the mapping of these results, or the density of these events in a certain time frame. I mean, the density can change. This happens also kind of in granular synthesis. I mean, granular synthesis is like distributing a certain density of events in time with by choosing a waveform for each event, and then you deviate its pitch around an offset in a basic random with the help of the basic random function, the pitch, the amplitude, and then you accumulate all these events, and then this sonic texture, like a powder, it's like spread like a powder in space. It happens. So it's granular synthesis. Actually, is a stochastic sound synthesis, more defined in music industry. It's more actually proposed by the American computer music approach. What Sonic Lab is interested in doing is like offering tools for algorithmic composition and the sound composition. I mean, making a bridge in between that. So I was inspired from the methods, as I explained, from of Xenakis in doing that. And these are the figures which you can find in his book Formalized Music. So his sonic entity is here. You see, I mean, it's a vector. I mean, which is defined in time space with certain pitch and gain. So it has a start and it's in motion. So it's there is this two-dimensional also expression of that. Actually, you can see them also as MIDI note events. I mean, like they start and there is some modulation in that event. Xenakis has created glissandis for acoustical instruments, and this is his score, part of his score of his piece Metastasis, so which is composed for string instruments. So these lines have each line has the function becoming a glissandi for this particular string instrument, solo instrument. So they start here and change the pitch and go there, and then the three-dimensional application of this is this architectural work of the presented in Philips Pavilion in World Fair in the 70s. He collaborated with Le Corbusier. So again, the same mathematical functions, but in three-dimensional form. So again, another example is in his piece like called Pitapracta. These graphical representation of modulation sources are reminiscent very much to events in nature, of course. For example, this you can see like a distribution of a gas, volume of gas in space, for example.